and being like, I don't need anybody, which is also not true, right? And so I think when you settle kind of in between, where it's like we talked about, I should be good by myself, but I could be better with helping hands. And I think that's the biggest thing for me.
Well, it goes back to self-sufficiency. You can be self-sufficient and need a helping hand at some point in your life.
Totally.
And when you can acknowledge both things can coexist, being self-sufficient and needing help in life, then I think that's the golden, the G spot, you know?
And I think that goes back into what we were talking about earlier, where it was like, I'm kind of blanking now, of being authentic and coming into yourself, right? Like being aware of yourself should mean that you're not afraid to ask for help because you're comfortable and confident with yourself. It doesn't feel like a strain to ask for help, you know? And I think that's kind of like holistically, it kind of all ties in together.
Yeah. And I love that because I think sometimes at the depth, there's fear of weakness.
Yeah, most
and
definitely.
It's all so fucked up. It really is, because if someone ever asked you for help, if your dear friend said, hey, I need help with this, you wouldn't think they're such weak pieces of shit.
No, never.
You would think, I love to help.
And
if you love that person.
Absolutely.
So why don't you think someone else would want to do that for you? And why would you rob someone of the joy
100%.
to help you?
And I think that's one thing is like people don't realize a lot of your friends are like waiting, not in a bad way, not waiting for you to fall, but supporting you, cheering you on, being like, hey, if you ever stumble, I will be here. But I also don't want to invade on your space and being like, hey, are you good? Hey, are you good? Right? They're like there because they assume that you guys have a good enough relationship that if you're struggling, you would reach out. And I think a lot of stuff gets lost in communication right there.
Yeah.
You know, where people are like, oh, I want to reach out, but like, no, do what your heart inclines you to do, right? If it feels like you should reach out, reach out.
What's up, everyone? You are listening to Wake Up Naked. I am your host, Esmey Leon. We're going in deep into ourselves. We're going to be talking about ideas and concepts and things that have the potential to actually change our lives. So get excited, get ready, and what are you waiting for? Come over here and get naked with me.
Charles, dude's got freaking moves.
I think the two things that people don't do enough of, whether you're good at or what you're bad at, is singing and dancing. Like when you're alone.
Yeah.
Like I learned this because my mom was literally like, one time I was like, Mom, what do you do? And she's like, I just sing to myself when I'm in the car. And it makes me happy. And I'm like, okay. And then you start to do it. Like you do it in the shower, you do it in the car. And you're like, these are things as humans that we're meant to, we can do it with no one around.
Yeah.
And it just makes us happy.
Yeah.
And it releases endorphins and energy. And I think we all need to do a little bit more of that.
I'm with you.
Right.
Now, Charles, get comfortable and bring that in nice and comfortable. I want you, and don't be afraid. Right here, boom, boom. Our Nocos fell down, but we're all good. There we go. And then, okay. So
I'm just trying to catch my breath still.
I'm with you, and we'll recap on that. But we're all good to go, right, team? Beautiful. Okay. Thank you, first of all, for being here. I love your energy, and I love what you just said about that. We're gonna come back around to that, but first, I want to say, what's up, team? My name is Esmey Leon. You are at the Wake Up Naked podcast, and I am here with the one and only Charles Shyu. What's up?
What's happening, Esmey? Thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate the chance. Super fun. It's been one of the best connections of my working career to meet you, and you just have this most infectious energy and have helped propel everything that we do to the next level. I swear.
Wow. Well, thank you. I'm supposed to be complimenting you, but you started off the interview with that, so I appreciate that. I received that. And I'm a reflection of you because I feel exactly the same way about you. Charles, you are the brand specialist for Noco.
Correct.
And I'm actually part of the Noco team. So, hey, reppin', okay? Now, for someone that's never heard of Noco, give them a quick update. Update.
Okay, so as far as the product goes, it's basically a recovery drink, right? Branched chain amino recovery drink, something that all adults should supplement with for the most part. And we wanted to come from a more credible standpoint. There's a lot of drinks on the market. It's a little bit saturated. However, we wanted to make a quality product that stands out, and then also stand out in other ways, like engaging with the community, right? So there's two different products that we have: the caffeinated at 180 milligrams of caffeine and 3,000 milligrams of aminos. And so everything that we say is in the can is in the can. It's labeled. There's no proprietary blends. It's straightforward, transparency, and kind of giving power back to the consumer in choosing what you put into your body.
That's really cool. And I love them. I have one almost every single day.
I see you rocking them.
Yeah. Now, you're the brand specialist, so I know that it's really important for you to build culture.
Correct.
And so beyond just Noco, what are you trying to create within? I mean, it starts with Noco, but I think it also goes into the entire world.
Absolutely.
What does it mean to you to build culture, and what does that look like?
So the cool thing, right, is I've been chosen kind of to assemble a team of ambassadors, such as yourself, good people at the end of it, right? I think that's the key thing that we look for. So I always tell people that we want to match all of our ambassadors or athletes with the theme of the product. And to me, the theme of the product is authenticity. So I'm looking for authentic people that represent who they are within, and they're able to externally show it the same way. And I think you do such an amazing job of that on your page, through your podcast and everything like that, engaging other awesome humans. And so that's what I look for. And in terms of building culture, right, I'm assembling this team kind of with expertise in all different things, right? Fitness, CrossFit, MMA, whatever it is, the prerequisite is that you're an authentic person that's true to yourself, because that's what the product is. And so we've kind of been able to differentiate ourselves a little bit by, we host a lot of workouts, we engage, we have our ambassadors network, gather content together, right? Because it's about unity and inclusivity, as opposed to like, oh, you can't join our club or something like that. No, everyone, we always joke around, call it like Noco enough. Everyone can be Noco enough, right? It's all about finding your why within, and I think being able to externally propel that.
Yeah. The thing that stood out to me when you're talking about that is authenticity and the importance of that. How did you come into your authentic power?
I think that's a long road. So I'm gonna be honest. I struggled a lot as a kid. I feel like, one, I grew up in an area which my ethnicity was super underrepresented, not only like in the area that I grew up in, but the culture that I grew up in, right? You don't see Asian males like being strong or being leads or anything like that. They're like getting knocked over in hallways and like, reading books or like whatever. So I always wanted to like stand against the stigma, right? So I found I had such hardcore like phases, and anybody that grew up with me, like going through elementary school or like anything like that, would have seen them. I had one where I was like super like, found like a Tupac CD at Target or something like that. And I just like, I had the chains on my pants. I had the bandanas in my back pocket. Like at one point I got called in the principal's office and they were like, you can't be wearing chains on your pants in school. Like, this is like, what's going on?
This is in elementary?
This is in third grade. So then I had like a skater phase, and I just feel like I was trying to find somewhere that I fit in. Exactly.
Let me ask you, with that, were you conscious that you were Asian? Was that like a thing for you, or where did that come from?
It was so interesting. So, I mean, I feel like you don't really realize it. And as you grow older, you start to find these little things where it's like, I'd be like doing sports and somebody would be like, oh my God, he's really fast for an Asian kid, right? It's always followed up with, and that's what you realize that is what people are defining me as, right? And so I think the first instance is probably like school lunch, I feel like. And I talk to a lot of Asian Americans about this. You bring your mom's leftovers to school lunch and you open it up and it smells like garlic and onions, which now as adults realize, oh my God, that's like
delicious
the best
food,
exactly, right? But when you're a kid, you open it up and you see like a box full of noodles and kids are like, ew, what is that? Is that worms? Why does it smell like that? And you go home the next day and you're like, so Mom,
I don't fit in.
Can you buy me a Lunchables, please? Like,
can you buy me that crappy ham?
And literally now I would give anything to eat any of my mom's leftovers any given day. And so it's like the little things you take for granted growing up. But, my parents were understanding. They were always trying to help me out and kind of trying to get me to fit in. But overall, I mean, I think it took a lot of time. I think I definitely dealt with insecurities like growing up through high school. And I think fitness was a big part of helping me realize that, because that was something that was my own, right? Like nobody could take that away from me. I earned that shit. And it's complete like willpower. And like the thing about, and I'm sure, and you understand about working out as well, is anybody could do it. People are always like, oh, it's like you this or you could do that. Like, no, like,
you're special.
We're not. You know what I mean? We just chose to, I think you talked about this the other day, was like, we just chose for today to be day one instead of one day, right? And we just started off doing it. And then it's the consistency. And what I always tell people is that like your body or my body like is the culmination of the 5 years previous to it. So if you have 3 good years and 2 bad years, you'll probably kind of be in the middle, right? And if you have 5 bad years, it's going to take a couple years to overturn that. But each year that you flip over to the positive is 1 more year in the making. Yeah. And I think that's what people kind of like don't understand. But I talk in tangents. Back to the original question. Coming into myself, yeah, I think it was, like I said, I've realized that all of those little phases are a part of me now. And so like, I'm a little bit punk rock. Like I got the lip ring because I listened to a lot of Fall Out Boy when I was in middle school and I always wanted one. So when I became adult, I was like, I'm gonna do what I want. You know what I mean? Like I like the way it looked. I like the way it looked. And I stopped wondering and caring about what everybody else thought and just like was like, you know, I like this on me. I'm gonna rock it. Like people were like, oh, like the jewelry, whatever, puts off some type of whatever. I'm like, I don't care if it's feminine. I don't care. I like it on me and I think it makes me look good and I'm happy when I see myself in the mirror. Yeah. So like, I'm cool with it. And I think that to me is what authenticity is about, right? Like owning your own space and realizing kind of just like, you know what? I am the way that I am. And everything since I've kind of done that has been, I don't want to say like easier, but it's been more comfortable, I guess. You know, if you're just kind of like, you know what? I am the way that I am. And if you don't like it, that's okay, because I like me, like at the end of the day. And so I think that's really important for me. Yeah, no,
overall. That's beautiful. And that reminds me, I always say, like, you have your tribe, focus on your tribe.
Totally.
There's going to be so many people that don't get you.
Absolutely.
They're not going to get the ring, but it doesn't matter. Yeah. Like, focus on your tribe, because there's a group of people that love Charles, that love the look, that love, and whether they did or not, but there is a group that's like, yeah, I feel that I'm part of your tribe.
Love.
That's like, I love it.
Appreciate that.
So yeah, focus on your tribe. I like that a lot. And along to what you said. Now, this year was a big year for you because I saw that you did your first bodybuilding competition, right?
First 3, yeah.
And I
won.
All of them, right?
Well, no,
2 of them.
2 of them.
But still, you won your first one and your second one.
My second one, yeah.
And then the third one.
The third one was national, so it was definitely on a higher scale. And the thing about that one is, like, I don't want to say much because I messed up myself.
Where?
When I was there, so you have, everything's timed out very specifically when you need to eat. You have, like, you eat this 45 minutes before, you eat another thing 20 minutes before.
Okay.
The show was in New York. Because my sister lives in New York and I wanted to see my family. So I got a little bit distracted by family. We're all sitting together, catching up. My sister and her boyfriend just got engaged. You know, we're like looking at the ring and all of a sudden my friend runs up to me and is like, hey, your division is getting called right now. They're lining up. And I'm like, oh, I've eaten none of my stuff on time. I haven't pumped up yet. Like my tan and glaze aren't like ready.
Yeah.
So, you know, like we have what in bodybuilding is called like a peak. You have like this 30-minute window kind of where you look just the best you could possibly look.
Yeah.
And I missed it. And I peaked in the Uber ride back to the hotel. But such is life.
Too bad the judges weren't in the Uber with you.
I was sitting there like, oh, my veins are sick.
You're
in
like,
the Uber.
So good.
So it is what it is.
Hey, who has ever been able to say, I peaked in the Uber?
Yes, exactly. Normally, that's not a good thing. Normally, that means you drank too much at the pregame and you for sure are missing the whole night. You're getting sent back in the same Uber. Your friends are going to the place.
Oh, my God. That's too funny. I mean, funny, not funny. But it sounds like it was a lesson learned.
I mean, the thing is, like, it was my first year competing. And truth be told, like, most people don't make it anywhere near as far. They don't win their local show. And I won 2 overalls back-to-back, which is super fun considering, and that was January, February. And considering August, I had run into a kind of weird extreme medical condition.
I actually wanted to talk to you about that because, you know, I know we're talking about the glitz and glams. Right. Oh my God, so cool. You won the first 2 shows, which is obviously amazing. I'm not taking away from that. But I'm always more interested in the depth of the challenges that led you to that.
Right.
You know, because you can't feel the high without feeling some lows.
Most definitely.
So I know that was it 2018?
So it was, yeah, it would have been 2018, correct.
There
August.
was a nerve disorder that left you hospitalized and paralyzed for 3 months.
So I was paralyzed for, I want to say like 6 days, I think it was, and hospitalized, like staying overnight and stuff like that.
Got it. Okay.
But yeah, so it was a really interesting experience. I guess I'll kind of start from the beginning. It was one day, I had gone to a music festival with my friends and just hadn't really rested, like was working a bunch and just jumped straight into that. And at the very end of it, I had like this numb sensation on my foot. And I thought I had like pinched a nerve in yoga because I'd taken my friend's yoga class a couple days prior, but it kept creeping up. And then it was like the whole right side of my body at one point, and like I really couldn't feel anything on my fingertips, and it was super kind of disorienting. And then one day I was back at home. This was after I hung out with my friends and everything, and I was holding a glass of water, and it just straight slipped through my hand and fell on the floor. And like I didn't even notice it.
How many days was it from the festival where you first noticed it to
Probably a total of like 8 or something like
8
that.
days,
And so like after 3 days, it was like pretty bad. But it was a strange thing was only the right side of my body, and like I could move, but everything was completely numb. Like kind of you fell asleep on it.
Did you feel like it was nothing serious as far as like
Kind of at first, because I feel like, you know, when you're decently fit, you have this mentality where it's like, I got control. Yeah, I got control over my body. You know what I mean? I do drop sets all the time. Like, this is nothing, you know? And at first it was like that. But then I think it was like that wake up call when the glass slipped. I was like, that's not normal. And so me and my mom, we checked in to the ER. And yeah, it progressively kind of got worse over the next couple of days to the point where like, it was so interesting because before that I was, you know, a personal trainer. I was doing, and I was like, I couldn't even tie my own shoes. I couldn't cut my own toast. Like, couldn't even shower. And it was so crazy because, like, I felt like I lost my career at the same time as I lost my hobby and my passion. And I was like, I really don't know what I'm going to do when I get out. And they weren't sure if it was going to be permanent. They told me it was MS one day, another day it was like neuro. It was just a different diagnosis every single day. And luckily, I had a really good support system of family and friends that were like coming to see me. But it was the first time in my life that I had been stuck somewhere, like looking out the hospital window, and like I couldn't. It's not that I couldn't go outside; I couldn't make it outside. Like I couldn't, you know, like unless I was rolled outside. And so, after a little while, it kind of just like got to the point where they're like, "Okay, honestly, we don't know what it is, and it's not getting worse, so we're gonna keep studying up on it, but you can go home." And so I went home, and long story short, right, like we still don't really know what it is. It could be some sort of genetic autoimmune, and because it flagged a bunch of things, but I kind of got tired of going to doctors, and every single doctor was just like, so I have this friend, and you're like, okay, so you don't know what's wrong with me, but you're gonna pass me on to the next guy. And it kind of was like it was like at first, you know, like once a week, and then I kind of was like, oh my God, now basically it's settled. It's still in my extremities, kind of like pins and needles a little bit, but I can move. And so what I've always told people is that people do more with less, right? And not to say like, oh, I don't want to have that mentality where it's like, oh, like F excuses or like whatever. No, it's just like, it's more about like, let's focus on what I can do instead of what I can't. I can move, right?
Yeah.
I can't necessarily like pick avocados with my right hand, but like there's worse things in the world, you know? Like I can't really feel like the fingertips well. I can feel pressure, but not like sensitivity.
Wow.
But that's in my like opinion, like the grand scheme of things, not the worst thing. And so I think it was October or so that I decided like, I don't want to walk on a cane anymore. Right, I've never had to do this, and I think it kind of makes me look funny.
I don't look as cool.
Like,
yeah,
you got like a little bit of a pimp walk to it, but like, you know, after a while, like I'm good.
You milk the pimp walk out of it. Yeah, okay.
And so, you know, at one point, like not to be dramatic, I was kind of just like, F this.
So literally, it was just a mental decision because in theory, it didn't get fixed. No one knew how to diagnose it to this day.
Mindset for sure. I was like, I don't want to feel sorry for myself. There's no reason to. And like I said, really, there's amputees. There's some people do a lot more with a lot less, right? So who am I to, you know, and for me in that situation, I was kind of like, let's try. And it took a little bit of like limping, and it was not the easiest thing to do at first. And the other thing that helped a lot was my dog. I like pet her so much to try to just remind my brain what sensation felt like. So I think part of it too was like your brain's capable of amazing things, and it's capable of teaching itself to do things again and reestablishing connections to an extent. Like I said, like wrist down and knee down, I still have numbness and like tingling, kind of like if you fell asleep on it.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and that's on the daily.
That's on the daily. Yeah, I just kind of have like accepted it, I guess. I'm hopeful if it gets better, but if it doesn't, I function and I'm happy just fine without. And every little bit that is kind of has come back since then has been progress, and I consider it a blessing. And then the fact that I was able to make it so far. So like October comes around after August, and I was like, I don't want to walk on a cane anymore. So I didn't walk on a cane anymore. And yeah, it kind of looked funny for a couple, for like a week or two, right?
Yeah.
But your body adapts.
Yeah.
And it was really hard because my posture was really screwed up, because when I was laying in bed rest, like muscle mass tugs in different ways if you don't engage it right. And then I wasn't walking on my right leg for a long time. And there was a lot of like defining moments where I realized, one, I can't do this by myself, which I think everybody should acknowledge. No one is self-made.
Right.
And you talked about this the other day. You're self-sufficient, but you're not self-made.
Right.
Somebody gave you a hand at some point, anywhere in your life.
Yep.
And that was for me, that was my friends and my mom. My mom, really, right? Like, who else as a grown-ass man is going to put your pants on for you, is going to tie your mom, like that's what they're for. And so it was, at that moment, I became so much closer with my mom too, because the thing was, there was a couple defining moments. One, I realized kind of how severe it was when she was holding my hand and she was praying. And I was like, Mom, can you hold my hand while you're praying? And she goes, oh, baby, like, I already am. And I look down and she's like holding my hand, and I'm like, I can't feel that.
Wow, yeah.
And then two is like, I'm kind of decently stubborn. And so, it's like that classic, like I'm getting up, like holding the IV thing to try to get up, and I just ate shit. And everyone's like, oh my God, I'm like, no, I'm fine. Nobody help me.
Yeah.
And it took me a really long time to get up. But like, that was me. And that's always, I think, always been kind of my personality. But sometimes acknowledging that you need a hand and reaching out in that situation, because really all that did was, one, make me look a little dumb, lose a lot of ego, and three, it took me like 3 minutes to get up. Like, people are waiting on you, bro.
Let's go.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, it was not the path, like I think I could have taken a more reasonable route, or, and I guess there's some debatability in that, right? Where there's
a more reasonable route to what?
Just like
letting people help you.
Let people help you. Get up. Sometimes you'll probably get there. If you want to go far, go together. If you want to go fast, go alone. Right. And so if you want to go far, I think is the important thing. Like, you need support.
Right. Why do you think it's so hard for people to receive help?
I think, so one, I think I love this statement, is people accept the love that they think they deserve. So sometimes I think there's two cases. One, I think, is people don't think they're deserving of it. And I think that's a stigma that we have going, like, it's hard because we live in this kind of age where it's like, with Instagram and everything, it's super positive in a way, but I think a lot of people it impacts negatively, and they don't think they're as good as other people. And so they don't deserve as good as other people do. So they conceptualize this image of themselves in their head where maybe I don't, like, I don't deserve this big supportive crew around me pushing me on. And then I think the other side of that, right, the mirror image, is pridefulness and being like, I don't need anybody, which is also not true, right? And so I think when you settle kind of in between, where it's like we talked about, I should be good by myself, but I could be better with helping hands. And I think that's the biggest thing for me.
Well, it goes back to self-sufficiency. You can be self-sufficient and need a helping hand at some point in your life.
Totally.
And when you can acknowledge both things can coexist, being self-sufficient and needing help in life, then I think that's the golden, the G spot, you know?
And I think that goes back into what we were talking about earlier, where it was like, I'm kind of blanking now, of being authentic and coming into yourself, right? Like, being aware of yourself should mean that you're not afraid to ask for help because you're comfortable and confident with yourself. It doesn't feel like a strain to ask for help, And I think that's kind of like holistically, it kind of all ties in together.
Yeah. And I love that because I think sometimes at the depth, there's fear of weakness.
Yeah, most
and
definitely.
It's all so fucked up. It really is, because if someone ever asked you for help, if your dear friend said, hey, I need help with this, you wouldn't think they're such weak pieces of shit.
No, never.
You would think, I love to help.
And
if you love that person.
Absolutely.
So why don't you think someone else would want to do that for you? And why would you rob someone of the joy
100%.
to help you?
And I think that's one thing is like people don't realize a lot of your friends are like waiting. Not in a bad way, not waiting for you to fall, but supporting you, cheering you on, being like, hey, if you ever stumble, I will be here. But I also don't want to invade on your space and being like, hey, are you good? Hey, are you good? Right? They're like there because they assume that you guys have a good enough relationship that if you're struggling, you would reach out. And I think a lot of stuff gets lost in communication right there.
Yeah.
Where people are like, oh, I want to reach out, but no, do what your heart inclines you to do, right? If it feels like you should reach out. Like stop. I think so many people get stuck in that like, but what? No, like.
I don't want to be a burden.
Exactly.
I hear that a lot.
All the time.
And to be honest, I'm totally guilty of it myself, as far as like, I used to think I'm such an independent woman. I don't need anybody. But honestly, that was my protective mechanism because I was so scared of like people seeing me, and I was so scared of being hurt. Right. So if I just kept you away, you can't hurt me.
Yeah.
So my facade was this independent woman, and now it's shifted to self-sufficiency and then interconnectedness, which is what you're talking about. Like, no one is self-made anything.
Right. And I think another part of strength is understanding how to be taken care of as well. Right. And allowing yourself that, because it's a feeling that not everybody gets either through childhood, but I think what we all want to eventually achieve, right, is the feeling of being taken care of, loved for, right? Whether it's, and this is, I think it goes into spirituality as well. And like every single realm of humans, we yearn and search for connectivity, right? Unity, community. Yeah. And so I think that is that sense of longing or belonging that we feel overall.
Yeah. When was a time that you reached out for help when you didn't want to?
I think there was a time, I mean, just being open and honest, there's definitely been times where I struggled like a lot. So, I mean, I grew up with manic depressive, like, or other known as bipolar. So, there's definitely been times throughout my life that I've been on one side or the other. Like I've had manic phases where I've been like up for like nights on end and like thinking like kind of like irrational thought patterns, and also like times where I've stayed in bed for like days at a time. And there's like, those are the times I think where you really need to reach out and lean on friends, because when you trap yourself, it's a cycle, right? There's no way out if you continually just, right, stick with it. I think when you reach out is when you're able to break out of kind of like this illusion that you put into your head because of your own thoughts. A lot of the times we get trapped by our own thoughts. And I heard this the other day that I love. Thoughts are a great servant, but a bad master.
Right. If they're mastering you.
Right. If you have control over your thoughts, right, and if you have control over your own emotions, that's the most powerful thing I think you could do for yourself as a human being. But back to your original question in terms of reaching out, like, yeah, like there's been times where I'm like, hey, you know, Rebecca's one of my friends that I've reached out to a lot, but it's like, I've been in bed for like 3 days in a row. Like I've left to go to the gym and then come back and got back in bed. And for me, the gym was always solace, but like, it doesn't mean, just because you go to the gym doesn't mean that
you're good.
Yeah, exactly.
Been there, done that. Yeah, absolutely.
And I've had to be like, hey, like, I don't want to go out, but I need you to come and dig me out. And we need to just like walk around or something like that. And
was that easy for you to do? And I say that because I hear you saying it feels so graceful, but I've been there before as well. As far as, you know, I went through a very deep depression and couldn't get out of bed. Yeah. And the last thing I wanted to do was call people.
Right.
And I didn't. What happened to me was I suffered longer than I needed to.
Sure.
And I made up that I was alone.
Right.
But it's what you're talking about, was a thought that was made up. I wasn't alone.
Right.
I just didn't have the courage to reach out and say I need help.
Right.
Like you did. So when you reached out to your friend Rebecca, Is that something that where it's like you've just lived so much that you were like, I know this is what I need to do, so I'm going to do it?
I mean, I think it was in between. Like it was, like I said, I started dealing with kind of like the anxiety and depression probably like 7th, 8th grade, right? At that point in time, I think that's when I really isolated myself, because who are you going to go talk to amongst your peers at that age about those kind of issues? Like, that's not really a commonplace thing, you know?
And also I feel like it's not really heard about.
No.
You don't hear about an 8-year-old having anxiety.
Right.
So what do you think led to that? Looking back
for me,
now.
probably a tumultuous upbringing. I mean, I definitely I'm still working on kind of my relationship with my father. But I think kind of growing up in, I don't want to say like an unstable, because to me, it was like my childhood, you know what I mean? But if you look at it from an objective standpoint of view, like that shit is kind of fucked up.
Just saying.
Yeah. And so like when I tell my story to my friends, they're like, but to me, like that's just my childhood. That's how I grew up. And it made me who I am. And it explains pretty much, like I think a lot of the ways, like it explains why I am the way that I am, and I wouldn't change it for the world. But, you know, it did give me some issues to work on growing up. And those are things that I've had to filter out throughout, you know, adult life and stuff.
I would say issues and perspective.
Absolutely.
Because I feel like it goes hand in hand. And someone that has a past that feels very traumatic, there's a lot of depth if you're willing to be an alchemist.
Yeah, you
turn
got
it
to
into
dive
gold,
in there.
You know, but you have to be brave to look.
Totally.
Which it sounds like you have been.
And I think that part of me is like, I was always kind of like an introspective kid. I spent a lot of time alone, like drawing. I was always comfortable observing, and that's something that this open side of me is something I like worked up over time. Even in college, like at a setting of over like more than 5 people, I kind of would feel more comfortable just observing than like taking part. And then I'd realize like, oh shit, like you haven't said anything in 10 minutes. Like people don't even know you're here anymore. Like,
say something, you're disappearing.
You're like, it's weird.
And then nobody's actually paying
exactly,
attention.
Like it's
Nobody
no,
cares.
100% not.
Yeah.
But it's something that, you know, over time, and especially like it's crazy because my position now is purely to connect with people for the most part.
Right.
And so and people are always like, oh, like this side of me, like, no, you don't understand. Like this is a adaptive side of me, I think. And I think people don't realize that you can, if you work on things long enough, right? Like things will, like if you do an 8-week program, you'll get somewhere. If you do a 16-week program, you'll get further, right? Just by principle of time. And so I think that's one of those things that really has just, it's a time kind of thing.
Hey, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you got as much out of that as I did. If you have not hit the subscribe button, make sure to go back and hit subscribe and keep coming back. Team, we are going